Hello, friends, and welcome to Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly podcast designed to help mainstream Texans of faith understand the legislative process and to help you engage with the Texas legislature. My name is Scott Atnip, your host and Texas Impact's Director of Public Witness. And y'all, it is event season at Texas Impact as we prepare for the primary elections that will shape the future of public policy in Texas. Next week, hundreds of United Women in Faith will be participating in United Women in Faith's 38th annual legislative event. And then the Texas Impact team travels to Dallas for North Texas faith votes, and soon after that we'll be in College Station, Houston, and more. We're traveling the state because this election season is important, and we want to share tools and resources for Texans of faith to be effective advocates. So check out the events page at texasimpact.org and sign up to come see us, and then promote the events to your friends and congregations. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the issues that will be driving the conversation this year, and a corresponding Texas Impact event, as we welcome leaders from Friends Congregational Church in College Station. They're partnering with Texas Impact on an event called Changing the Conversation, the Theology of Reproductive Justice with Reverend Dr. Rebecca Todd Peters, February 11th at Friends Congregational Church in College Station and streamed online. Y'all, I know attention has turned to the presidential race, which is already underway, and I'll be honest, I can't help but peeking at those results too. But we've talked for years about the importance of the super low turnout Texas primary elections, where your vote really matters to help shape the policy future of Texas. And following a year of contentious legislative sessions, plural, this year's are especially important. So hope you're paying attention and organizing your friends, because these elections are a big deal. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with our friends from Friends UCC and College Station. Joining us for today's conversation are friends, pun intended, from Friends Congregational Church in College Station, Texas. On February 11th, Friends is hosting an event with Texas Impact we're calling Changing the Conversation, the Theology of Reproductive Justice with Reverend Dr. Rebecca Todd Peters. And here with us today to talk about that event, our senior pastor, Reverend Dr. Dan DeLeon. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Cecilia Hawkins, a leader with the Justice and Mission Outreach Committee at Friends. Hey, Cecilia.
Hello.
And last but not least, our friend and friend of the program, Kyle Rile, who is Texas Impact's Houston Civic Engagement and United Church of Christ Fellow, who we're all excited is about to finish seminary and is connected to Friends and is playing a big part in this event. Kyle, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here, Scott.
Well, I really do appreciate you all taking the time. I know you're doing a ton of work to get ready for this event, February 11th. And before we jump into the event, I want to start out by talking a little bit about Friends in College Station, y'all, because this is an important year and we need Texans of faith leaders and congregations to lead on justice issues. And you all are doing just that in hosting this event, recognizing that sometimes doing that can be hard. So, Reverend Dan, Friends has a culture of engaging in justice ministries. You all really are a leader in the area on this. Talk about that culture and how other congregations can emulate the ministry you're doing there, and all the things Friends is able to do.
How do we foster that culture? It has a lot to do with us as a congregation listening to one another, but more importantly, listening to the wider community and discerning what are the voices that are not being heard, what are the needs that are not being met, and at the risk of making it sound like a business model, it's finding our niche as a faith community where here in Bryan College Station, there are literally 200 plus faith communities. So this is a community that takes good care of itself, but there are many different justice issues. And like I said before, voices and needs that are not being heard, they're not being met. And so, for example, most recently thinking of things like when books are being banned, we have a book club that is in honor of a dearly loved member of our church who died recently, Linda Coates. And that book club opted to read only banned books to get started. There's food justice is tremendous in our community where there are different church pantries, but in our area, there was not one that existed. And during the pandemic, we got one started in partnership with a neighboring church, Peace Lutheran Church, And that has been going on to date every Friday in the afternoon, serving as a mobile food pantry in this area where previously that did not, that was not being provided for. And of course, the discussion that we're having right now about reproductive justice, which is something that is intimidated against in our community, and a need that is that we're trying to rise up to meet, but that we're not trying to do on our own, that we're trying to encourage others to, like you were saying before, follow in our lead in that respect.
I appreciate that. Cecilia, you are an active leader in that congregation. Do you agree with Dan's assessment and say a few words about why you think it is important that Friends and other congregations like it engage in these justice ministries?
Well, of course, I agree with Pastor Dan.
That's good. That would have been really awkward if you had said yes.
But what he said about finding our niche and meeting unmet needs is just right on point. I was at a meeting yesterday with a lot of people who are either or don't go to church or go to various churches. And a woman approached me and said that she was excited about our upcoming event. And she said, "You all do such a good job of providing a place for us to go to talk about things that we can't talk about in our own congregations." And she brought up something that we had done a while back, which was an event on immigration sanctuary. And she said, "I loved that. And that's just something that our church doesn't bring up at all." So I think, that's the important role that we play in this community. And, we have a really nice reputation for that. I think a good reputation for doing that.
I think so. And part of your good reputation is sending really great young people to seminary and doing ministry around the world. Kyle, we've talked a lot about your calling, your ministry that you're currently engaging in and plan to in the future. And Friends really shaped a lot of your calling. Talk about that impact and the impact a congregation like Friends can have.
Yeah. So when I came to Friends, I was kind of unsure as to what I wanted to do with ordained ministry. And I got pulled into our justice and missions team, and I have not looked back. They are so committed to all of our missions and making sure that all the needs of our community are being met as much as possible. Friends as a community is not only committed to justice within our justice and missions committee, we are committed to justice in all aspects of our ministries. And our congregation just has so much leadership within it. It's got people who are passionate about all kinds of issues. And Cecilia is just one of those wonderful people. And our people are not afraid to bring those issues to us. And I think that's one of the really beautiful aspects of Friends is they've got a passion for a justice ministry, and they know that if they bring it to our leadership, we're going to find a way to make that happen. And our community of Friends is going to get behind them and help them to fulfill that need.
Well, I do appreciate the congregation, and you all do serve as a model for what other congregations can do. But we did mention at the top that you have a big event coming up that you're doing in partnership with Texas Impact entitled Changing the Conversation, the Theology of Reproductive Justice. And Cecilia, we're going to start with you. There are a lot of issues, and we've talked about some of them already on this podcast, a lot of issues that we could pay attention to. Why is this especially an important conversation, and why is it important to you in the congregation?
Well, I'll give you a little background. I won't start with the fact that I'm 75 and remember the days both before and right after Roe. Right after the Dobbs decision, I participated in a protest in downtown Bryan with my 43-year-old daughter. And I witnessed the grief and anger. It was palpable. And I don't remember exactly what happened next, but I'm sure I spoke to Pastor Dan about it. I think I probably came to the Justice and Mission Committee and said, we need to provide a place for these people. These people are hurting. We need to provide a place for them to be, to go, to be able to talk to one another. So people just immediately said, yes, what can we do? So that's kind of started the ball rolling. So over the last 2 years, we've done a variety of things, including as Congregationalists, talking a lot and then voting on becoming a reproductive freedom congregation. So I think that's sort of emblematic of how things have happened a lot at Friends, is that there's a crisis or an event where people are needy, and we see that, and we try to create a space for them to find some comfort and maybe eventually some activist opportunities. So, and why right now? Because we just lived through a pretty horrible legislative session, and one's coming up before long. So we can't just sit around about this. We need to be active about it.
Amen to that. Dan, I want to turn to you next because you have a history of speaking out on issues, but I feel like this is one of the issues that faith leaders have been hesitant to talk about. I mean, I grew up in Texas. I live close to College Station. I know a lot of clergy throughout the state, and especially in this area, will maybe pop their head up from time to talk about racism or immigration or poverty type issues, but reproductive justice has not been one that the clergy have been willing to speak up on, at least in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about the importance of speaking out about the theology of reproductive justice, especially in the context in which we live.
I'll speak to two things then. One is kind of the reasoning behind the hesitancy, and then why it's important to do it now. And I say reasoning, I don't say justification for the timidity on that. Why so many of us have been timid to speak up on it. From my own personal experience, part of it is because of the fact that I'm a man, and I feel strongly that it is not my place in a lot of cases to be talking about women's bodily autonomy, about women's rights, that is not my place. But I do feel like also, as I continue to listen to women and women clergy peers, that I need to also get over that and speak up. And that involves a lot of a steep learning curve on my part because of what I just said, but also because of completely honest, in complete transparency, being afraid. Mm-hmm. And there's a great deal of intimidation in our state and in our community in particular against speaking up for reproductive justice, for mentioning pro-choice, and to find a way to articulate that from the pulpit, to be able to preach and teach that in a theological framework that makes sense and doesn't sound like some meager alternative. There's a strong case to be made for reproductive justice, and I'm excited about learning and getting more of an opportunity to speak up, and hoping that my peers would be doing the same. Why is it important now? One of the things that we were reminded of in our community recently at an MLK breakfast, it's called, at Texas A&M University, the guest speaker was Dr. Angela Davis. And Dr. Davis reminded us that when it comes to progress, we celebrate wins, but we neglect to protect the things that we have won. And as a result, these things get taken away from us, as in the Dobbs decision and so many other things. And our friends on the far right do a good job at protecting and moving forward and protecting those more conservative values. Ironically speaking, it's about moving forward. And so in our community, for example, we had a Planned Parenthood. And a few years ago, that disappeared. And what moved into where that space was? A 40 Days for Life. It's a pro-life organization center. And so that's just continuing to protect those values. So we would do well to do the same, not taking for granted the good things that we have, that we're fighting for. And that's why it's important for us to be speaking up about this now.
Do you feel like folks have shifted over the course of the last 2 years, about especially faith leaders being more willing to talk about this than they were pre-Dobbs?
Do I feel like they're more willing? Yes. I continue to unpack why that is, but for me personally, it has a lot to do with just I want to know what I'm talking about. It's less of a timidity and more of a hesitancy to just not say something that's going to be counterproductive. It obviously this is a justice issue that needs attention now, but we faith leaders would do well to educate ourselves in ways that we're not just knee-jerk speaking and providing good constructive theological framework for how we can equip those who are hearing us and that we're working in solidarity with to speak up themselves.
Yeah, and I think that event will hopefully provide some tools for us to do that. If we're talking about the explanation for that, my guess is I heard from women in my life who never talked about politics, who were outraged post-Dobbs, and I think that listening process a lot of faith leaders went through probably contributed to greater likelihood to speak out. Appreciate that. Kyle, you are helping organize this event, both from the Friends and Texas Impact end. What do you hope comes from it?
Well, so as Dan was sharing, like, our being able to articulate what your faith is telling you about these issues is something that is so important. And when we held our event last February to talk about the legislative session coming up at the time, and to do kind of a watch of what issues were going to be on their dockets, we asked our community, what else do you need from us to be able to take action on these issues? And overwhelmingly, the answer that we got was, we need help being able to articulate our point of view and how our faith impacts our understanding of reproductive rights and reproductive freedom. And there was, if our clergy leaders are still struggling to do that work, our people in the pews are still struggling to do that work more so. It's hard to bridge that disconnect between what they hear from the pulpit, even if they're in a church like Friends, where they're hearing those things all the time. It's hard still for our folks to be able to articulate their faith and their understanding. And so having an event like this is just another opportunity for folks to ask questions, to get that information, and to have all of it presented to them in a way that is accessible and that is exactly what they're looking for, to be able to articulate why they see this as a faith-based issue.
Right. I appreciate that. I usually ask the speakers at the end for shameless plugs. I feel like we've done about 15 minutes of shameless plugs now for an event coming up at Friends. I will let you sneak one in if you have one, but I want to open it up just to see if any of you have any closing thoughts or maybe homework assignments that you wish listeners would take on the coming weeks.
I've got something there. So riding the coattails of what Kyle just said about reproductive justice, I feel like when it comes to how do we talk about this, how do we speak up about this, being able to simply say reproductive justice and understand what that means is something that we need to continue to build up and strengthen, so that we can get away from just this either or, pro-life, pro-choice, stuck in that binary argument that doesn't lend itself to talking about why reproductive justice is important. And that's what I'm getting at when I'm talking about how much we have to learn. And honestly, Trust Women, the book by Rebecca Todd Peters, affectionately who goes by Toddy, is an incredible resource to be able to get educated about that. And we're excited about her coming to talk with us a little bit more about the subjects that she raises in that book to equip us more.
I'll say that one of the things that also came up from our event in February last year, we had the wonderful Reverend Amelia Fulbright come and share with us a bit of her understanding as a faith leader in this this world of reproductive justice, she shared with us that a challenge for our congregation to try to use the word gynecology more from the pulpit and in the congregation. And that is still a challenge that we are working on at Friends, but I want to extend that to anyone listening, that if you're working on this issue, you can't be afraid to talk about the issue.
Yeah.
All right, Cecilia, anything to close us out today?
No, unless Kyle wants to tell everybody how they can live stream our event. That would be great.
Oh, that's a good follow-up question. Kyle, do they have to come to College Station to watch us? Now, I would say everybody should come to College Station, but do you have to be there in person?
Yeah, so you are encouraged to come to College Station. That's the only way that you're going to be able to see Dr. Peters and to have a book signed by her at the end. We're going to have a couple copies for sale, but we're really encouraging folks to bring their copy of any of her books and have her sign it at the end of our event. But if you are not able to come to College Station, we are really encouraging folks to get together with their faith communities and stream the live streamed event on our Zoom and build that community, do it in a watch party so that you can all talk together and discuss together the same questions and the same kind of things that we're going to be doing in College Station at the in-person event.
So go to texasimpact.org, click events. Is that right? Or is there anywhere else they need to go?
Yeah, texasimpact.org/events.
All right. Well, I really do appreciate the time, y'all. And I know folks would be excited to see y'all either in College Station or on the live stream. Really appreciate the ministry of Friends Congregational Church in College Station, and really looking forward to this event on February 11th. Thanks for the time today, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with Dan, Cecilia, and Kyle, and we look forward to seeing you in College Station or online February 11th. Y'all, this is an important year for democracy and justice issues like reproductive health, and I know Texans of Faith will be ready for the challenge. We look forward to partnering with you. If you have questions or ideas for the program, let me know. You can reach me at scott@texasimpact.org. I also hope you'll support this podcast by subscribing, sharing, or by joining Texas Impact as a member to support this podcast and the work of Texas Impact year-round. So with that, I think it's time to close out this episode, so remember, the world needs Texans of Faith active and engaged. So let's get to work.
Weekly Witness is hosted by Scott Atnett, engineered and produced by David Fasalo. Our executive producer is B. Moorhead. The opinions expressed on Weekly Witness are those of Texas Impact and our guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views of our sponsors. Weekly Witness is a product of Texas Impact, people of faith working for justice. Visit us online at texasimpact.org.